YouTube, it's Reed from Fresh from the Garden, and we're fresh at the garden. It's September 2nd, and we've gone through a lot of the season. You can just keep it rolling, but I'm gonna redo that. Okay. Hey YouTube, it's Reed from Fresh from the Garden, and we're fresh at the garden. It's the end of the season, September 2nd, and there's a lot to go through still, new things coming up, and we're gonna recap on what we've seen throughout the season and what we've learned so far. So let's come on in the garden and check it out. You can kind of tell that things are winding down for the season. For example, this mullein plant that was a champion the whole season has sort of gone into its dotage, and it's making a ton of seeds now. And I've done this several times, but there's already just a ton of seeds. You can see them all over, the little black dots. But there's still things flowering. So this is the Jerusalem artichoke, also called a sunchoke, and it has gorgeous, almost like a sunflower type flower. Previously, there were sunflowers all over the garden, and you can see the remnants in and out, but mostly I've been taking them out as they die and using their biomass to build up the beds for next year. Bird feeder. So these are going to be two of my pristine annual beds for next year. And most of the garden's being converted into a perennial system. For example, I put in this apple tree and various perennial crops. So there's a grape and some garlic chives and some catnip and some rhubarb and some strawberries. And this was previously the pea bed. I don't know if you guys remember this trellis. Eventually got fully filled up with peas, and then behind it there was huge zucchinis. There's still a couple zucchinis in the garden. Over here's one of the nicer ones. You can see there's actually even putting out like kind of a second flush of flowers. I think after the temperatures drop from the height of summer, there's new zucchinis growing, and I've already picked so many from these vines, but you can see like, here's a nice little zucchini, and there's a really big one that I'm actually saving for seed. But previously they were all over. In July I left for China for 10 days. The hills are alive with the sound of Chinese, a song they have sung for 4,000 years. My heart swells with the sound of Chinese. Dun 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 dun. Hi puppy. Doggo. Who's a good doggo? Okay, bye doggo.
My religion. So you can make a video.
Pretty cool. And when I came back, there was sunflowers and zucchinis and sweet potato vines and morning glory vines just all over. And largely I've got it back into a more sensible, I mean it's sensible in the sense that like it makes sense. You see it and you're like, oh, here's a path, as opposed to the plants falling all over things, which is nice too. But yeah, here's a really nice Black Beauty zucchini. It's the second generation that I've grown, but it's still pretty true to phenotype. It's all open pollinated, so that's why you kind of think. But yeah, the companion plantings are working really well. So here's an apricot tree that I put in this year, and you can see it's growing nice with the bergamot and the black-eyed Susans. I put in a mulberry tree just for a companion plant. There's rhubarb, zucchini. Here's asparagus that came up through the zucchini, which is pretty impressive. But I also just put in some garlic chives. You can see oh, and if you notice the sand, I've been going into the forest because this is really near a creek, and it floods. So there's various berms of just sand. And I'm trying to build up the loaminess of the soil. If you recall back to one of the videos where I dug up some soil out there, it's very clay rich. There's a foot of good topsoil, but it's more on the clay side, very dense. So I'm trying to build up the loaminess, especially in my annual beds. So here's one I put a lot of work into recently. It had carrots and beets and all sorts of stuff. But when that died out, I've been coming back in and almost making a lasagna of soil, like a soil lasagna. As you can see, there's some mulch on top, some green mulch as well. And then there's some sand. It's almost straight sand, just from the forest. And I'm not disturbing the trees, it's just there's big berms of sand, so you can find it pretty easily. And then there's a second layer of various radishes and stuff, but green compost. And if you go down further, if I can even get down there because there's so many layers now, there's more green, and then there's layers of topsoil, and then more layers of mulch, and then the soil from last year. So next year there should be a really rich bed of very loamy soil that I can grow carrots and sweet potatoes and whatnot. I had some sweet potatoes this year. They were delicious. But yeah, it's interesting to think about the seasons because I've seen so many different iterations of this gardens. Plants come, they have beautiful sunflowers, the zucchinis come in, the tomatoes have come in, and then they fade, and you think about the season and reflect. So I'm almost in sort of the reflective stage for this season. You can see so much. I mean, this is fennel. The fennel was great this year. I put in new perennial trees. So this is a plum tree that I put in. The chilies are still doing great. And if you look around, I've tried to add more herbs and companion plants. So there's some tarragon and some sage, some chives and some strawberries, some walking onions that are from Weatherby Park in Iowa City. In addition to some of the radishes that I just put out previously. And you can eat these pods. I don't know if anyone's tried these out there, but it just tastes like a radish. Pretty good though. Kale. I really had success with the grape tomatoes. I don't know how many are left right now. Probably not too many. Well, you can see it's making a second flush, but I probably had hundreds from both this plant and the plant over there. Made some good salsas at the get together. This is pretty exciting too. So the figs are finally making fruit. I had one just a couple days ago. Another thing about fall is you start to reclaim various spaces. I haven't reclaimed this yet, so I'll walk under a bit. But, ooh, looks like a bunny maybe nibbled it a little bit. But look at that. It's gorgeous. We'll give some to Helena too.
Thank you.
Taste? Oh, really good. I mean, to me it's almost like an apricot. A little different texture, but the flavor tastes a lot like an apricot. It's very different than a dried fig, but that's pretty fun for Iowa having fresh figs. I mean, I don't know anybody else that does that. I'm not saying there aren't other people, but I don't know any. So that's pretty exciting. This is the second year I've had those plants. But yeah, you can see evidence of the birds eating sunflowers all over the garden. So here's like a sunflower seed in an apple tree. I mean, obviously it didn't just fall there, which is great. I honestly make the sunflowers mostly for the birds and just from like the horticulture value I get from them. And there's a really pretty one. I mean, they're all pretty, but the biggest one was right over here. If I can come out. This head is just massive. And there was a few like this, but this was the biggest one by far. And there's still a few seeds actually, so maybe I'll try to save some, but just an enormous head. And when it was full in its glory, it was really an awesome plant. But you can also see how much biomass they put out. So this is 1 year, it comes from a sunflower seed, and you get like a 3-inch, fairly pithy, but still a 3-inch trunk with a root ball. It's about that big, at least, when you pull it up. And at the end of the season, you can come in and take the leaves and just mulch it, which I see you've done around the garden. So actually, I like sunflowers for so many reasons. Both they give a sort of almost a barrier, a seasonality. They add a lot of biomass, and the birds like them. So I've seen woodpeckers and goldfinches come in and eat the seeds. So yeah, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. The Mexican sunflowers were gorgeous. And they also, it's nice because they sort of offset the regular sunflowers. But this plant's a little bit less colorful, but it's almost iridescent. The intense orange. And it's also really fuzzy, so you can feel it. It feels nice. There's comfrey coming in. Got the radishes all around. Got sage, so I shouldn't step on that. Cabbages are coming in. The milkweed is almost done. I'm pulling sweet potatoes out. Got kale. My moringa is growing pretty well, so that's pretty cool too. This is, I think I may have mentioned it in an earlier video, but it's an African, almost like a lettuce tree. I mean, you can eat the leaves. And it tastes like lettuce. I mean, it's a little bit spicier, but still. So that's pretty cool. I'll have to bring in a couple of these in the winter because definitely will not survive the winter here. But my apricot tree is doing really well. This is the more established one. Oh, I have like the third flush of strawberry or raspberries. These are, I didn't intentionally only pick red ones for my parents' house, but I ended up only getting red raspberries. But they're really good. And it's probably the third flush of raspberries I've gotten. This is where the currants and the strawberries are. The everbearing strawberries are also putting out a new flush. The sand is because I've been coming back in and adding mulch and sand and stuff. So it'll fall off in a couple days. Put in some more garlic chives. Put in more grapevines. So now I'm up to, I don't know, 6 or 7 domestic grapevines. Over here, I don't mean to keep pushing you out of the way, but I've got a marigold. So last year I had marigolds everywhere. And I just took the seeds and I spread them, and I figured they'd come back pretty well. But they didn't really come back, except for this plant and a couple other ones. But this is the biggest one, and it's about to make marigolds. So you can see how big the heirloom marigolds are relative to the dwarf ones. And last year I had plants about this tall too. So I'm pretty excited to see this. I'm trying to build up my mulch for next year, which in this pile I'm like adding a little bit of wood chips, a little bit of sand, and a lot of green matter. So this should be really rich for next year to add wherever I want it. So let's go check out, I built some raised beds outside as well. Oh, you almost run out of breath just talking about all the exciting things going on. It's an apple tree. I put this in, there was the pea cage, I don't know if you see the trellis. I put this in once the zucchinis and the peas were done. And I'm gonna train the grape to come around. There'll be rhubarb and strawberries and chives and catnip and all sorts of good stuff underneath. And then the apple tree I'm actually gonna train to go parallel to the cage. It actually won't touch the cage eventually. So it's kind of fun just playing with this. This is also where I put all my old cages and fencing and stuff that is too bent up to use. So I put that there. Various apple trees. My plum tree just grew like crazy this year. It did get really attacked by the Japanese beetles, but it grew from here to here in one season. And that's even like having all of this disturbed in mid-height of the season. So I'm really impressed with that plant. But this is pretty fun. So in addition to that raised bed, I've come in and built some raised beds outside. And this is sort of an experiment with how do you grow plants exposed to deer and the bunnies and whatnot, because they mostly don't come inside. But out here, they're definitely exposed to it. So you have to be selective on your species choice. But these are raised beds with wood I reclaimed from the city, like municipal dump pile. They have a place for wood. And so that was pretty interesting. I got a lot of really good topsoil. I put in garlic chives just kind of in and amongst, and I'm hoping they kind of fill in the cracks. And I've cover cropped it with peas and radishes, and there's a few sunflower sprouts, like here's a sunflower. I also use some of the compost from like the pile over there. So there's tomatoes that have just come up naturally, which is pretty funny. There's blackberries and raspberries and gooseberries and rhubarb and various herbs. So I'm hoping that over time this becomes richer soil and is a nice addition to the garden, that people can also come by and take whatever they want, because I realize this is more communal space. Also, I do want to kind of humble brag that this is a really big piece of wood. That was very hard to get, but it's here now, so that's really cool. So yeah, that's kind of the state of the garden. There's always, it changes so much week to week, both with what I do and, you know, take a bed out, put a new bed in, but also the plants, they mature. And so, for example, this watermelon, it seems to grow before your eyes, because yesterday I was here and it was maybe the size of like a lemon, and today it's more like a grapefruit. And that's just amazing how quickly it can swell up. So yeah, I think now I'm doing a montage of all my like Instagram shots of the interesting insects and the flowers, and some shots of what it looked like throughout July and into August. But yeah, this is where it is today. And there's even more stuff. Like here's a runner bean that's just growing like crazy, and they're everywhere. So yeah, that's what it looks like as of September 2nd. And I hope you stay for the rest of the video so you can see the progression from where we were to how we got to where we are now. We realized we didn't talk about everything, so here's one of the raised beds I built inside the garden, and the goal of this is to to grow really nice carrots next year. I'm looking for at least a foot, that's the goal. And this year I had more success than previous years, growing fairly thick and, you know, about half a foot long carrots, so I was happy with that. But to really get a nice carrot, I think I need to increase my soil depth, because it's only about a foot deep here. So what I did is I went into the forest and got some sand, in addition to some compost I still had around, and built a really loamy, nice soil. So you can see in various parts it's a little bit darker, but it's really soft, and there's a fair amount of nutrition, but really the loam is what I'm looking for. And then I've cover cropped it with various wheatgrass and radishes, and there are some peas and sunflowers, but I don't see them coming up yet. So yeah, I'm really excited for this. I think this will be really good. Obviously, I need to come back in with the chainsaw and cut these too tall of trunks, because they're on the south-facing side, so that'll block a fair amount of sun. But I didn't build this all in one day. I had to go back to the pile several times, and so really you'd want the tall stuff on the north side, but you know, that's what happens when you build over time. I think besides that, there's, I mean, obviously a few things like the Kiss Me Under the Garden gate still growing, and there's canna lilies, and the voodoo lily was growing really well, and then the sunflower top that knocked its head off. But yeah, so I just want to talk about this raised bed here and kind of my vision for it in the future. So I think it'll be pretty good.
He was kind of zig and zag for a little bit. But he found it again, which is good. I'm gonna watch him now. Again, somehow he got up here. They can fly with it. Oh, he's on my pant leg. Right. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna pick you up, buddy. Man, this guy is determined. Although, to be fair, it's probably... Oh, he lost his cricket. Hopefully he gets it back. Okay, I'm gonna try to walk away so he gets his cricket back. My new apple tree. That's amazing. Off into the sunset.